Hello, how's it going, everybody? Today we're going to be jumping into Isaiah chapter 57, and we're going to go up to 59. Give me 1 second here, make sure we're not lagging or anything like that. In the meantime, you guys can get your Bibles out. Okay, we're not lagging. Okay. So, Isaiah chapter 57, we're getting close to the completion of Isaiah, actually. Let me see real quick. Yeah, in a few days we'll be done. Isaiah is ending on chapter 66, and we're on 57, so a couple more days and we'll be done with Isaiah. So, let's jump into this. Isaiah chapter 57, the subheading is Israel's futile idolatry. And we know Israel's been having an issue with idolatry, right? They've been running back to idols and, well, it's been futile, huh? So let's jump into this. Isaiah 57. I'll get the volume up. Okay, let's get started.
The righteous perishes, and no man takes it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, while no one considers that the righteous is taken away from evil. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. But come here, you sons of the sorceress, you offspring of the adulterer and the harlot. Whom do you ridicule? Against whom do you make a wide mouth and stick out the tongue? Are you not children of transgression, offspring of falsehood?
Let me go back. So the righteous perishes, and no man takes it to heart. Merciful men are taken away, while no one considers the righteous is taken away from evil. Let me look up a commentary about that. Okay, the righteous perishes, so the good people perish, and no man takes it to heart. So no one feels bad that the good people are perishing. And merciful men are taken away, while no one considers it. That the righteous is taken away from evil. So are we living in an evil world and the righteous are being taken away from it? This seems to not flow completely with what we read recently, right? Let me look this up. Well, let's see. I'm using my Bible now, right? Because we're back. So let's jump into 57:1. Let's see if what my Bible's got anything to say. So, I mean, it does, but it's jumping into specifics. It's jumping into word usage instead of the meaning. So let me look up a commentary here. Isaiah 57 commentary. So, the righteous perishes, carrying on the rebuke of Judah's leaders from the previous chapter. The Lord speaks to the persecution of the righteous. In this case, it is persecution through neglect. The righteous perishes and no man takes it to heart. So the carrying on the rebuke of Judah's leaders from the previous chapter. God rebuked Judah's leaders in the previous chapter. Israel's irresponsible leaders, the previous section we just read. All you beasts of the field come to devour. All you beasts in the forest, his watchmen are blind. They are all ignorant. They are all dumb dogs. They cannot bark. Sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. Yes, they are greedy, which never have enough. And they are shepherds who cannot understand. I think this was a section I was like, this reminds me of Attack on Titan. They all look to their own way, everyone for his own gain, from his own territory. Come, one says, I will bring wine, and we will fill ourselves with intoxicating drink. Tomorrow will be as today, and much more abundant. So they're people who are essentially not doing their jobs, right? They're irresponsible leaders. So the righteous perishes. So, but why? But I wouldn't consider them to be righteous if that's the case, right? So maybe we're just referring to righteous as in, the so-called righteous. Carrying on the rebuke of Judah's leaders from the previous chapter, the Lord speaks to the persecution of the righteous. In this case, it is persecution through neglect. The righteous perishes, and no man takes it to heart. When Isaiah proclaimed, this is important. Many critics of the Bible demand that Isaiah was written after the Babylonian exile, because so many events after the exile are precisely prophesied. But the sins described in this chapter are strictly before the exile. This chapter is a marvelous proof that the book of Isaiah was written in the days of Isaiah, but by one author before the exile. That's interesting. There is no evidence of corresponding post-exilic practices. A prophet in the post-exile could not have written like this. That's what Motir says. All in all, we prefer to think that the reign of Manasseh, for the abominations of this king, are all found in this chapter. Bultema. The righteous is taken away from evil; he shall enter into peace. Though the righteous were ignored and persecuted by the wicked leaders of Judah, God would not forsake them. When they perished, when merciful men were taken away, God used it to bless the righteous, to take them away from evil, and to allow them to enter into peace. You see, that bit confused me right there. The righteous is taken away from evil; he shall enter into peace. Though the righteous were ignored and persecuted by the wicked leaders of Judah, God would not forsake them. When I guess because they have earned their spot, and so God didn't want to be too harsh with them. God would not forsake. Well, God didn't forsake all of Israel, but He still, as a whole, but He still did punish when He had to. I guess they're not doing anything wrong. They are doing wrong, right? They're sleeping, lying down, loving to slumber. They're drinking. They're not focused on what God had told them to do. They're literally like the scouts after the 100 years of peace in Attack on Titan. When they perished, when merciful men were taken away, God used it to bless the righteous, to take them away from evil and allow them to peace. That's interesting. So God was very forgiving and I don't know about understanding, but God was very forgiving with them. They were probably chosen to be leaders for some reason, for a certain reason, right? Maybe they were good, but then they just got complacent, maybe. And but God didn't forsake them completely because He knew what good they had done in the past. I'm making assumptions here, but that's interesting. What do you guys think about that? Why do you think God didn't forsake them? Why do you think He showed them mercy? And let's see, Isaiah 57 verse 2, he shall enter into peace, and they shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. So my Bible is saying peace here refers to the final state of the righteous who rest in their deathbeds. No one understood that the righteous were being spared the judgment to come. Okay, so that falls in line with this, right? Where is it? Many critics of the Bible demand that Isaiah was written after the Babylonian exile because so many events after the exile were precisely prophesied. But the sins described in this chapter are strictly before the exile, right? So the judgment didn't even come yet. So God is mercifully killing these righteous men and it seems like they're going through persecution through neglect, but in fact it is an act of mercy because they don't have to suffer through the persecution. They don't have to suffer through the judgment and the persecution that is about to unfold. So that is actually interesting. So let's keep going here.
That the righteous is taken away from evil. He shall enter into peace. They shall rest in their beds, each one walking in his uprightness. But come here, you sons of the sorceress, you offspring of the adulterer and the harlot. Whom do you ridicule? Against whom do you make a wide mouth and stick out the tongue? Are you not children of transgression, offspring of falsehood, inflaming yourselves with gods under every green tree, slaying the children in the valleys, under the clefts of the rocks?
That's interesting, though. Inflaming yourselves with gods under every green tree. So they had gods under trees. They used trees as like places of worship, looks like.
Under the clefts of the rocks, among the smooth stones of the stream is your portion. They are your lot. Even to them you have poured a drink offering. You have offered a grain offering. Should I receive comfort in these? On a lofty and high mountain you have set your bed. Even there you went up to offer sacrifice. Also behind the doors and their posts you have set up your remembrance. For you have uncovered yourself to those other than me, and have gone up to them. You have enlarged your bed and made a covenant with them. You have loved their bed, where you saw their nudity. You went to the king with ointment and increased your perfumes. You sent your messengers far off and even descended to Sheol. You are wearied in the length of your way. Yet
What do you think that means? Even descended to Sheol? Like, do you think that can mean literally, as in
you did not
they
say
died, or maybe something to do with mediums? Let me go back. Let me go to this commentary here. Whom do you ridicule? The wicked among God's people made fun of the righteous. They mocked them, and God heard it. Here the Lord challenges them, simply asking, who do you think you are? Who are you mocking? And are you not children of transgression, offspring of falsehood? This speaks to a common sin of human nature, to see the sins or the problems of others while being blind to our own sins or problems. Inflaming yourselves with gods under every green tree. Here the Lord begins to expose the spiritual adultery of his people. They are hot with passion for other gods, worshipping them in the ritual worship places of Canaanite paganism. Every green tree, among the smooth stones of the stream, on a high and lofty mountain. In this picture, the Lord is the husband of Israel, and their passionate, chronic attraction for that's a good way of phrasing it. Their passionate, chronic attraction for idols was like the lust of an adulterer. His people pursued the false gods like a lover runs after the focus of their love, and they yield themselves to the idols as a lover yields themselves to their beloved. You have uncovered yourself to those other than me. That's interesting. A green tree might be a place for such idolatry because the evergreen tree spoke of constant fertility. Interesting. So they created these like groves in the trees for places of worship. Holy. Slaying the children in the valleys. One of the Canaanite gods the Israelites worshipped was named Molech, and he received children as sacrifices. And that's God hates child sacrifice, right? Molech was worshipped by heating a metal statue representing the god until it was red hot, then by placing a living infant on the outstretched hands of the statue, while beating drums drowned out the screams of the child until it burned to death. How do we know that? Molech was one of the lovers God's people forsook the Lord for in their spiritual adultery. Lovers in air quotes. People who would not make a small sacrifice of the Lord God would kill their own children for a pagan idol. And as the love of harlots is oft hotter than that of husband and wife, so superstition many times outdoeth true religion. Wow. Yeah, so they were in a lost place, right? And that is why God's about to rain down judgment.
On up to them. You have enlarged your bed. You sent your messengers.
Oh, wait, I didn't get to the part where they descend to Sheol. That was the part, that was like the reason why I went into this commentary. Let me just... I don't think the commentary even mentions it. But I'm guessing maybe it could be taught if they're being very sinful, right? So I'm guessing, and even you sent your messengers far off and even descended to Sheol. So they're going to places that they shouldn't go to, and even delving into this type of territory, right? Places where we definitely don't want to go to, right? I'm assuming dealing with the work of mediums and things like that, right? Maybe trying to find their way into Sheol in some sort of way. Could this mean like killing themselves, committing suicide, killing each other? What do you guys think?
Is far off and even descended to Sheol. You are wearied in the length of your way, yet you did not say, "There is no hope." You have found the life of your hand. Therefore you were not grieved.
And of whom have you been afraid or feared, that you have lied and not remembered me, nor taken it to your heart? Is it not because I have held my peace from of old, that you do not fear me? I will declare your righteousness and your works, for they will not profit you. When you cry out, let your collection of idols deliver you. But the wind will carry them all away. A breath will take them. But he who puts his trust in me shall possess the land, and shall inherit my holy mountain.
And one shall say, heap it up, prepare the way, take the stumbling block out of the way of my people. For thus says the high and lofty one, who inhabits eternity, whose name is holy.
I dwell in the high and holy place, with him who has a contrite and humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble, and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. For I will not contend forever, nor will I always be angry. For the spirit would fail before me, and the souls which I have made. For the iniquity of his covetousness I was angry, and struck him. I hid, and was angry. And he went on backsliding in the way of his heart. I have seen his ways, and will heal him.
He's describing
I will also lead him and
Abel.
restore comforts to him
Cain.
and to his mourners. I create the fruit of the lips. Peace, peace to him who is far off.
Let me pause it here real quick. Where is it? For thus says the high and lofty one, who inhabits eternity, whose name is holy. To be right with God, the first thing to do is to understand His great majesty. The Lord introduces Himself to His people with titles reflecting His great majesty and expects His people to respond to Him as such a glorious God. To revive the spirit of the humble, though God is the high and lofty one and lives in the high and holy place, at the same time He will live with men with Him who has a contrite and humble spirit. This is the second thing that being right before God. This is the second thing to being right before God, being contrite and humble before the God of great majesty. For I will not contend forever, nor will I always be angry. The third thing to understand is in getting right with God is His great love. Here the Lord shows His mercy to His people, but promises to relent and not be angry forever. Though God disciplined His people, He now says, I have not seen His ways, and will heal him, and will also lead him and restore comforts to him. Is that after? For I will not contend forever. And the next one was, for I will not contend forever, peace, peace. I have seen His ways, in peace, peace, right? For I will not contend forever. Where is that? Okay, so that's what I'm saying. We skipped this part. So let's read it again then. For I will not contend forever, nor will I always be angry. For the spirit would fail before me. You see what I'm saying? Where I'm getting confused here? For thus says the high and lofty one. So God is saying this, who inhabits eternity, whose name is holy. I dwell in the high and holy place. God is saying this. With Him who has a contrite and humble spirit, to revive the spirit of the humble and to revive the heart of the contrite ones. For I will not contend forever, nor will I always be angry. For the spirit would fail before me, and the souls which I have made. For the iniquity of his covetousness, I was angry and struck him. I hid and was angry, and he went backsliding in the way of his heart. What do you mean I hid and he was angry? For the iniquity of his covetousness, I was angry. And what does that mean? What does this mean? This is a weird way for God to act, right? Let me see if I can find something in my Bible here. Okay, I hid. For a related reference, see chapter 1, verse 15. Okay. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 15. I don't know which one was 15. Let me just look it up. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 15. Let's keep it New King James. When you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not hear you. Your hands are full of blood. Okay. So he's not literally hiding in fear. He's not thinking like, I shouldn't have done this. And he's not hiding from another human being because he doesn't want to be found, regardless of the reason. He is, when I spread out your hands, I will hide. When you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not hear. Your hands are full of blood. So you are such a sinner. You don't deserve to have your prayer answered. You can't, you You did something bad. Now you got to pay the consequences. You know, you're there. I'm not giving you a way out. So, where is it? For the iniquity of his covetousness, I was angry and struck him, and hid and was angry. See, but the way it's phrased is odd, because he says, I was angry and I hit him and then I hid. Like he regrets hitting him because he did it out of anger. And he went on backsliding in the way of his heart. What does backsliding mean? Backsliding, falling back in principle or practice, a lapse in or abandonment of religious obligation. So it would have it's having the opposite effect of what God would have wanted. I've seen his ways and will heal him. I will also lead him and restore comforts to him and to his mourners. I will not condemn. So out of anger, God judged the people because he was angry. Not out of anger, but he was angry. He was angry at the people and he judged them. And then he hid from them. They remained in that state for some time. And then he brought them out. I think that's what it's trying to say. It's not that God got mad at this guy, got mad at them, hit somebody, and then ran and hid. It's not like that. It's God was angry based on how they were behaving, punished them, and then hid himself away, meaning like they kept calling to him, but he didn't answer. And then after some time, he restored comforts to them.
Peace, peace to him who is far off, and to him who is near. And I will heal him.
But the wicked are like the troubled sea when it cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. There is no peace, says my God, for the wicked.
Dang. So they're really going to go through it. No way out.
Cry aloud, spare not. Lift up your voice like a trumpet.
That's why
Tell
God said
my
earlier,
people
right?
their
He's going to close their eyes, close their ears, right? They're just going to take the punishment. I mean, I don't want to get into that conversation if that meant he's describing an event or he's actually doing that, but you guys can check out the previous video when we talked about the initial video when we talked about the judgment about that.
Transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they are not. Cry aloud, spare not. Lift up your voice like a trumpet. Tell my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. Yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness and did not forsake the ordinance of their God. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take delight in approaching God. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen? Why have we afflicted our souls, and you take no notice? In fact, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exploit all your laborers.
So, okay, so here's God's looking at the bigger picture of fasting, right? He's saying, why have we fasted and you have not seen? And then God says, in fact, in the day of your fast, you find pleasure, right? So fasting should be you should be abstaining from pleasure, right? Food. You shouldn't be exploiting your laborers, right? You should be in a humble state. But if you're not eating, but then you're going around and doing whatever else you want to do, that's sort of counterproductive there.
In the day of your fast, you find pleasure and exploit all your laborers. Indeed, you fast for strife and debate, and to strike with the fist of wickedness.
To say like, hey, look, I fasted, you're a bad person. Is that what it's trying to say? Like you're fasting for the wrong, your intentions are wrong. You're not in the right place. Because if you're in the right frame of mind, the right state of mind, and you have that foundation set of why I'm fasting, then you'll carry out the rest. But these guys are not fasting for the right reasons, and therefore they're doing everything else that they shouldn't be doing if fasting was their goal. Fasting is just not eating. It's more than that, right? That's why it's important to God, because it's not just, hey, I'm not eating today. It's the whole state of mind beyond that.
And to strike with the fist of wickedness. You will not fast as you do this day to make your voice heard on high. Is it a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head like a bulrush and to spread out sackcloth and ashes? Would you call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord? Is this not the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke? Is it not to share your bread with the hungry, and that you bring to your house the poor who are cast out? When you see the naked, that you cover him, and do not hide yourself from your own flesh?
Then your light shall break forth like the morning. Your healing shall spring forth speedily, and your righteousness shall go before you. The glory of the Lord.
So not only should you abstain from the pleasures of your life, you shouldn't hold on to them, even though you're not experiencing them currently in your fast. You should share them with others. Give them to others.
Shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer.
Makes
you
sense,
shall
actually.
cry, and he will say, Here I am. If you take away the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, if you extend your soul to the hungry and satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness.
Yeah, that
and
would
your
really push you
darkness
into that mindset.
shall be as the noonday. The Lord will guide you continually and satisfy your soul in drought and strengthen your bones. You shall be like a watered garden and like a spring of water whose waters do not fail. Those from among you shall build the old waste places. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations, and you shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to dwell in.
If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him not doing your own ways, nor finding your own pleasure, nor speaking your own words, then you shall delight yourself in the Lord. And I will cause
So that's
you
what it
to
means by, keep the Sabbath day holy. If you turn away your foot from the Sabbath, from doing your pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy day of the Lord honorable, and shall honor him, not doing your own ways. So that means on Sabbath, right? We go to church, we come back, and then we focus on God. We keep the Sabbath day holy. We don't play video games. We don't watch TV. We don't do secular activities that we would normally do. Things for our own pleasure. We honor it as God's holy day. Not doing things our own way. Not finding our own pleasure. So that's similar to fasting, right? That's like fasting once a week. Not fasting from food, but fasting from all the pleasures and all the daily activities and all the things that we do, that we choose to do on a day-to-day, and focusing it all on God. So that's what fasting is. That's a bigger picture to fasting right there. It's not just not eating. Because I intermittent fast every day. That doesn't mean, you know what I mean? That's not fasting according to God.
Yourself in the Lord, and I will cause you to ride on the high hills of the earth, and feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father. The mouth of the Lord has spoken.
Behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy that it cannot hear.
Okay, so I'm going to guess, just assume from what we're talking about right now, the children of Israel are upset. They're confused. They're like, why hasn't God... I'm assuming this is probably the judgment that started or something like that. And why isn't God, been hearing them as they're going through their struggles, right? And they're probably like, God, why can't you hear me? Why aren't you reaching out and saving me? And so it's saying, behold, the Lord's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy that it cannot hear. So it's not like he can't save you or he can't hear you. He knows exactly what you're going through. He's listening, he's hearing, he knows, he can see. He's just not doing it. That's what I'm assuming it's going to say, just based off that first verse. But we'll find out.
But your iniquities have separated you from your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he will not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies. Your tongue has muttered perversity. No one calls for justice, nor does any plead for truth. They trust in empty words and speak lies. They conceive evil and bring forth iniquity. They hatch vipers' eggs and weave the spider's web. He who eats of their eggs dies, and from that which is crushed, a viper breaks out. Their webs will not become garments, nor will they cover themselves with their works. Their works are works of iniquity, and the act of violence is in their hands. Their feet run to evil, and they make haste to shed innocent blood. Their thoughts are thoughts of iniquity. Wasting and destruction are in their paths. The way of peace they have not known, and there is no justice in their ways.
That's sad, man. Like they're doing all these evil things because they think it's for their own pleasure, but they don't experience peace. So they're probably searching for peace. They're searching for this feeling of happiness, of peace, by doing all the things that they want to do, that they find pleasure in. They're not even thinking of God, right? That's probably not even on their mind. And they're never going to find this if they keep on this path. Wasting and destruction are in their paths.
Justice in their ways. They have made themselves crooked paths. Whoever takes that way shall not know peace.
It's actually
Therefore,
a sad
justice
state.
is far from us, nor does righteousness overtake us. We look for light, but there is darkness. For brightness, but we walk in blackness. We grope for the wall like the blind, and we grope as if we had no eyes. We stumble at noonday as at twilight. We are as dead men in desolate places. We all growl like bears and moan sadly like doves. We look for justice, but there is none. For salvation, but it is far from us. For our transgressions are multiplied before you, and our sins testify against us. For our transgressions are with us, and as for our iniquities, we know them. In transgressing and lying against the Lord, and departing from our God, speaking oppression and revolt, conceiving and uttering from the heart words of falsehood. Justice is turned back, and righteousness stands afar off. For truth is fallen in the street, and equity cannot enter. So truth fails, and he who departs from evil makes himself a prey. Then the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no justice. He saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. Therefore his own arm brought salvation for him, and his own righteousness, it sustained him. For he put on righteousness as a breastplate, and a helmet of salvation on his head. He put on the garments of vengeance for clothing, and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds,
the armor of God,
accordingly he will repay. Fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. The coastlands he will fully repay. So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him.
The Redeemer will come to Zion, and...
That's interesting. The Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. So there is a standard, there is a line that God draws. And that line is important. Today we are trying to erase that line in the name of what is the word? Dang it, the word is slipping my mind. The word is slipping my mind. You know, like acceptance, you know? Inclusive, right? Inclusivity, right? That line is from tolerance was the word I was looking for. That line is being erased in the name of tolerance, right? But God has a standard, right? It's the same logic he used when naming Jerusalem a holy city. And there were certain requirements in order to enter Jerusalem. It didn't mean that God is blocking off all people who don't believe in him, who have different practices than him, that came from different walks of life, that have different backgrounds from him. That's not what it's saying. Yeah, he's blocking you off from Jerusalem because there needed to be a place that held that standard of holiness. So, like a frame of reference, right? Because Israel has been lost to paganism so many times, right? So, and we can't let it come in, right? That's why God literally initially said he wanted to wipe it all out, right? Kill everybody. So here in Jerusalem, he wanted to create that standard, right? You can't be unclean, you can't be a sinner if you want to enter Jerusalem. Yeah, sure, you can enter, but you have to change your ways. So the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. That's interesting. That's cool. Before we go on, I want to look this up also as well. Oh, I could have just done this. What verse? Oh, here, okay. Our sins testify against us. Righteousness stands afar off. Now God's people are in a better place. They have had their reality check and see things as they are. No longer do they blame the short hand of God or his heavy ear. They know it because of their own sins that righteousness stands afar off. Then the Lord sought, and it displeased him, that there was no justice. He saw that there was no man, and wondered that there was no intercessor. The state of God's people was no mystery to the Lord. They cried out in Isaiah 59, stating how desperate their condition was, and the Lord knew it all along. The Lord sought, and it displeased him that there was no justice, and he saw that there was no man. He saw that there was no man, and he wondered that there was no intercessor. Not only was the state of God's people bad, but no one among them took the lead to get it right. Where was the man who would lead the people in righteousness? He could not be found. Where was the intercessor who would plead God's case to the people, and would and the people's repentance to their God. No intercessor could be found. Therefore, his own arm brought salvation for him. So because nobody rose up, God had to do it himself. So that's interesting. God is not necessarily going to call you to do something. He might already expect you to get up and do it. He's probably not going to come knocking on your door and calling you like he did for Moses. He might expect you to get up and just do it. Because maybe you know better already. You already know. Moses maybe didn't know, right? Because he had a completely different foundation set in Egypt. He had a completely different background. Whereas the children of Israel here, they know God. And so God was waiting. God was waiting to see who would rise up. He wasn't going to choose somebody like he normally did. That's interesting.
To those who turn from transgression in Jacob. As for
the Redeemer will come to Zion, and to those who turn from transgression in Jacob. So God was like, fine, I'll do it myself.
me, this is my covenant with them. My spirit who is upon you, and my words which I have put in your mouth, shall not depart from your mouth, nor from the mouth of your descendants, nor from the mouth of your descendants' descendants, from this time and forevermore.
So not only will God's words be in the mouths of the descendants forevermore, God will be with them because his covenant holds them together, right? And that's an encouraging thought. But that's going to be it for today. We just finished Isaiah chapter 59. Tomorrow we'll jump into chapter 60, Isaiah chapter 60. Let's get a little sneak peek what that is going to be about. The Gentiles bless Zion. That's going to be interesting, right? Because Zion is Jerusalem. And Gentiles are not allowed into Jerusalem anymore, right? You couldn't just walk in there, right? You have to abide by the standard that God set. So now I'm curious to see what's going to happen. Because God didn't say, yeah, Gentile, if you're Gentile, come. If you're a sinner, come. If you believe in me, I'm going to wipe all that away, right? And that's a very similar message to what Jesus had, right? So again, when people say that there's a disparity between the Old Testament God and New Testament God, I don't really see it. The more we read, I'm seeing like they're pretty similar, like, and they should be because they're one and the same. But I'm curious now. What's chapter 60 going to be about? Tomorrow we'll find out. And I hope you enjoyed today's reading. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you tomorrow for Isaiah chapter 60. Take care.